Jill Jackson, and welcome to another edition of Confabulation. We are stationed at OSH, our sister's house in Tacoma, Washington, and so I'd like to go around and have everybody on the panel introduce themselves.
I'm Sanders, I'm the office assistant.
Gabe, the victim advocate.
Joy, project coordinator.
Michelle, social work intern.
And again, I'm Jill Jackson. I am the family violence advocate and legal advocate here at our sister's house. So today our topic is, are we still slaves in a psychological sense in today's modern era? Does anyone want to start the topic off?
Who are we defining as we? Like, what's the group we're talking about?
We are talking about Black people in America, or actually any American run outside of United States, like that had slavery, like the Bahamas, or
So isn't that all just one? Jews have slavery?
Yes.
Okay.
There were slaves in Egypt, they came.
But
Well,
I don't think that.
I'm just
counts.
saying,
Yeah.
That
Holocaust
doesn't.
ain't slavery. I know about Jews, Holocaust.
No,
Slavery, bro.
well, there was, yes, Jews
But, I
were
mean, we're-
slaves, but I think what
There's
we
a
wanna,
difference.
we
There's a
wanna,
difference also is,
I think what we wanna stick to here is probably Black people in
Yeah.
America, and any American provinces that had slavery, and that was abolished.
well, so the difference is also that here, they were not immigrants. And in particular
But we
Jews.
weren't, Black people were never.
Right, no, but I'm
immigrants.
saying that's the difference, is like, Jews were immigrants here. No, but that's what I'm saying.
Okay, what are we gonna talk about?
We're talking about Black.
We were,
We can
but
talk
you,
about everybody.
you asked what is slavery? Like, are we still slave, and what is the definition of our slavery?
Okay, let me revise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
Let me revise.
Please, because
Okay.
I have to fix
When-
that.
If you are descendant of slaves from the
There
transatlantic
you go.
slave passage in the United States or any province of the United States, do you still hold today a slave mentality? Let me put it like that.
I like that. Okay.
Yeah.
I would say that we are still enslaved in a sense, because there is, even beyond mentality, there is still a realm that we are kept in white America, because that's basically what it is. It's white America. It's not, I can't claim America as mine because America won't claim me as theirs unless I was enslaved. But I think that we're still kept in, I don't know, these type of like fields, and even like when we go up into a field, or if we are a CEO or something else, we're still kept in this box where we're not
Yeah.
allowed to freely express ourselves. So I think that we are still enslaved in lots of different avenues.
Yeah. What do you think, Sanders?
I feel like we're like, I see Black people more slaves in the sports industry, I guess, because because you're working for, mainly there's no Black ownership, all the owners are white, and then when you go through a combine, they're testing you. They're like, you're selling yourself so you can get drafted, basically. They ask you questions. They ask, are you smart enough? Like, they think we're like dumb because you're an athlete. Are you smart enough? Can you do this and that? Like, let me see you take your shirt off. Let me see how built you are. You're basically selling yourself to a white guy, someone to draft you.
Like you're on the block.
And then you see like in the NFL, like you see guys, they're for Colin Kaepernick, but they won't say anything out loud because they're a slave to a white man. They want to still get paid and still have money for the table. But you see, Colin Kaepernick, he got out of that, and now he still has no job, and he still have bums who are worse than him have a job.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel like slave.
Okay.
But do you think that, they have a choice to be in the NFL? Like, they don't have to be in the NFL, they can choose a different career. So in that sense, they have a choice. If they don't like their contract, what they have to do, basically it's a job, you sign a contract. saying you can do this, you can't do this, just like any other job, like working here, there's certain things I can do, there's certain things I can't do. Do you think you're still a slave in the NFL because you have a choice to be in the NFL or you can do something else?
Well, I think it's like, if you have a chance to make $1 million over to working a 9 to 5, you're gonna take the $1 million because you're gonna provide for your family. And you want to provide for when you have a family too. Working 9 to 5, you have to bust your butt like every day, you're not getting paid that much, you should be making more. So I feel like, and if the contract, say if you were in the NBA and they said, oh, you can do all this, but you can't do certain things over the summer. So how would you feel about that? They're like say you can't go jet skiing because you might get injured, or you can't go climbing and hiking because you might tear something.
I mean, those things make sense because, it's, in the end, I think it's a business. And the athletes, are a product of the business, and that makes sense because if they hurt themselves, you're gonna lose money.
Yeah, but it's like, why are you telling me that's my fault if I do that though? Like, I don't need no one telling me, oh, you can't do this and this because
I think you can do whatever you want,
Yeah.
but if your contract that you signed says you can't go jet skiing in the summer, and then you agree to that, and you decide to go jet skiing in the summer, then your contract's basically voided, and then they cannot pay you.
I think Sanders is saying slavery in a sense in the NFL as to black athletes can't progress.
Yeah.
In other jobs you can progress, you can do whatever you want. Once your contract ends, just like slavery, if you got injured or anything, they just shoot you. That's basically what the NFL does. Like, if you get injured, you're done. They don't want any part of you. And on top of that, they won't give you anything else for you to progress. So if it's like I'm a football star and I got injured, they're not gonna give me a chance to be like, okay, why don't you coach? Or why don't you come sit on the big box and why don't you help us develop the NFL? They'll never give you those type of chances. So there is an enslavement as to the point as we're just kept at the bottom. We're just the football players and that's it. So I think if I'm
Yeah,
right.
like last
Or
year,
ownership.
yeah, like last year in the NFL, eight black coaches got fired.
Yeah.
Head coaches got fired. But there's still a bunch of white coaches out there who are not as good, and they still have their jobs, and they have losing seasons over and over and over again. So it's like, and then if you go into the NBA aspect, if you sign a contract and then they say, oh, if you don't meet the needs of being first team All NBA, you're gonna lose out on $30 million just because you didn't do one thing. And that's not up to you, that's up to people who vote on that. So you're basically losing money if you sign your contract and you're like, oh, you don't get so-and-so. So you're basically losing money. So you're basically a slave to the dollar. That's what I'm saying.
There's also the fact that when you're an athlete, you're starting at such a young age and you're driven into such a funnel. So it's similar to how slavery was, you were brought up that way, you were born into it. And you're brought up and there's only so many choices you're given and you're not given the choice. So if you're told by let's say a parent, or you're told by a coach, oh, you're supposed to play football, or you're supposed to play basketball when you go to college, they're not allowed to do anything else. And so once they get to college, oh, you're supposed to play professional, there's no other option. And so that's how that is to me a slavery. They can't when they're in college, they can't have jobs, they can't make money doing other things. They have certain priorities that they have, and it's usually you have to go to school and you have to play your sport, and that's it. And even making grades isn't necessarily the most important things. I mean, you've seen scandals about how certain colleges are oh, the professors gave them grades so they can play. So it's all about playing, and that's to me slavery in a sense. So.
Do you think it only applies, because there's also white guys in the NFL too, who are kind of put in that same position, if you're an offensive lineman and you get hurt, you get concussions, you're not allowed to play anymore, you basically get kicked out. So are they also slave in the same sense, or is that different?
But let's look at the mentality of the majority of the people holding up the sports industry are black people. No one comes to the
You mean
NBA.
what?
Well, who do
Holding
they?
up, you mean the athletes?
Yeah,
hold it up,
the athletes hold it up. People come out to see these black football players. I don't watch football or basketball.
All quarterbacks or.
Yeah, but I only know black black football players. Those are the only names I know. I don't know any white football players or basketball players. I don't know any names.
And
I
then,
mean, you can start looking at other sports now. Baseball, it used to be white, now it's not as much white. You start looking at soccer, there's more soccer players that are not white.
and The thing, like, also with the sports, you saw when the NBA, when the Donald Sterling thing happened, and you saw they released those tapes, and Blake Griffin said that, oh, he would touch my muscles and touch me, like, oh, look at this guy. It's like he was an item showing all the other white people, like, oh, he's like how big and strong and all this stuff. He's like, look at him, and he just got caught. I'm pretty sure there's more owners that do that they control you to where, oh, I need you to do this and this, so just so you can make your dollars, because you have to make ends meet at the end of the day. You don't want to go broke, so. And then, like, also with, like, at the colleges, a college coach, they can take away your scholarship like that if you don't follow by their rules, if you don't do what they have to do. And if you're a black kid that's coming from a poor income and your family can't afford college, obviously you're going to do what you can to have that full ride, so you don't put that stress on your family.
And let's talk about how student athletes in college are usually broke, and they make millions of dollars off of the student athletes, and that money doesn't trickle down. A bunch of people come out, like we went to the UW game recently, a bunch of people come out, a bunch of people spend to go see them, then you have people selling food, jerseys, all of that. None of that gets trickled down to the students athletes. All they get is a full ride scholarship, which is a lot, but at the same time that isn't something that they could live off of.
I think that's also has to do with like greed from the NCAA. They're actually trying to change that. Like a couple of states just passed laws where athletes can make agreements to get paid. So I think they're kind of working in that direction. But I think it's you're right, like there's a lot of NCAA, like the high ups, mostly are white guys who are greedy and want
Yeah,
money.
I think that's because I don't do sports. You guys are talking, you know way more
Well, there's a
about
lot
sports
more.
than I do, but I think that's my biggest issue. Because Gabe does have a certain point, that white guys are used too.
Yeah.
But, Sanders kind of, in a way, nips that in the bud, because seems like the black athletes are being looked at like they're on the block being sold. And I don't know how often that happens. I am assuming it happens a lot. But my issue is more of an economic one, where there are black millionaires and billionaires that can afford to buy these teams, and they're shut out. They're not allowed to buy them, and they're not allowed to buy them because then that would create power within these sports teams, the NBA, the NFL. And I'm looking at it like, well, they're the master and you're still the slave.
Well, that happened recently.
Because you cannot, if you don't have economic power, I mean, I think that's a big issue in the black community, that we wield a lot of economic power as consumers or as athletes, but we don't have the economic power as far as owning what generates the money. And if you own a team,
That's a lot of money.
that's a lot of money. I kind of want to bring it back to more, back to the plantation, if you will, because I think, and athletes is an excellent example, but I kind of want to open it up more to our way of thinking, since we have been colonized so much. And it's not just in the United States. Colonization happened all over the world, but it affects us differently here in the United States. I kind of want to open up that conversation, like the other day we were talking about code switching, having to do that, and we were talking about, and we're always talking about that more colonized mentality about dark skin versus light skinned, and hair textures, and those types of issues where we're so ingrained in white supremacy and white superiority that we think it's the norm.
I would say, for instance, I still identify, even though my family has never been through slavery, I've seen what African Americans suffer with slavery and what they go through, and it kind of got driven into me, because when I go to, for instance, a job interview, I instantly change my voice, I make sure my hair is straightened. I make sure that I'm more acceptable. And sometimes I'm always scared because when they hear my voice, I have everyone calls it a white girl voice. And when they see my name, the only thing that identifies me as black or as something different is my last name. Because if I just put in Joy, they'll think it's a white girl coming in. And as soon as a lot of people see me, they're always like taken aback because I'm black and they don't separate me from like African and African American. So they automatically assume I'm black. So I have that mentality that when I go into an interview, my hair has to be straight, my white voice needs to be on point. Like I have to change it up in order for me to get this job. So I think that is still a slave mentality because if I come in there with an afro, I'm not going to get the job, and I know that for a fact. And that's still part of enslavement.
So the United States never caught, I don't want to say caught up, the United States has never really matched up with bringing like blacks and African Americans together. Like if you think of the flag, what color is the flag? Red, white, and blue. There's no black in it. They don't represent the people.
Well, that's why African Americans basically have their own flag, their own national
Right.
anthem. But I mean,
Or
it's
the
not
national anthem.
I
It's
think
not
your point
recognizing the
is,
people.
it's not, that we're not recognized.
Right, so why, the real thing is like, is there still slaves? It's like they never actually recognize the people.
Yeah, well, they're not going to recognize us.
But
We
then
have to
you're saying is there still
realize,
slaves, is like,
It's not. Is it still slaves? It's are we still slaves?
yeah, are we
Are
still slaves
in the sense of
mentally?
mentality?
right, but if,
Yeah,
And-
or do we still follow a colonized
but
doctrinization?
wouldn't people still feel that way if Americans aren't accepting you even with our flags?
It's not about, no, it's not about our acceptance, it's not, it's not about acceptance, it's not that for the most part, and we're not a monolithic group, but it's not that, I think we've gotten past the point of black people in this country wanting to be quote unquote accepted by white society. We don't care anymore. It's that we want to be in a position to have our own economic base and power, own our own businesses. And it's difficult because if you want to go out and get a business loan, it's very difficult for a black entrepreneur to get a business loan. The banks won't lend to black people by and large. It's very hard. And we have all sorts of things that have happened in the past that have caught up now and it's toxic to us, like all the policies of Jim Crow and redlining and voter registration. All these things have suppressed us in a way that we can we're always playing catch up, And if we live and we've been colonized, so we've been taught to think that Europeanized dress is the best, and straight hair is the best, and lighter skin is the best, and these types of issues are basically, I think, killing us in a way. So that slave mentality really is a more colonized view, because you've been so colonized by whites through history of time, and just can't get away from that. Just can't get away from that. You just get away from that, getting away from that while you're living in an all-white society that's run by whites, and every system has been created to benefit whites, and every law is created to benefit whites and subdue us. It's very difficult to get out of that mindset. You're still sitting on the plantation with master.
Pretty much. Even if you go into a car lot nowadays, my mom recently, in 2016 she bought a car, and our pastor bought the same exact car, but my mom paid a higher price for it. There's a tax on being black, basically. There's still laws that keep us in the same defined box, that white people don't have that same box. So that is a form of slavery, because there are rules that suppress black power and black women and black men and black children.
Yeah.
So that is a form of slavery. It's not just, now that I look at it, it's not just a mental form of slavery. It's a way that America keeps us down and quiet.
And we're always being policed.
Pretty much.
Everything about, I was just saying this
Yeah,
yesterday,
yeah.
how we're always being policed. You know, our hair is being policed, our bodies are being policed. Where we go, what we do, where we work, walking in. I mean, I see on YouTube nowadays, walking while being black, swimming while being black, like the girl, the article with the girl, with
swimmer.
the girl who's black, she's a swimmer. And her swimsuit rode up in the back because she has curves and she has an ample butt. And all these, we're always being policed wherever we go, whatever we say, or whatever we do, and it just becomes exhausting. And I'll just take it back to what I was saying before. It makes it hard to break out of that colonized mindset, because we're always, like Joy said, now it's tangible. I mean, it always has been tangible, but it filters through different, buying a car, buying a home, renting an apartment, going to the store and buying groceries, walking down the street, running down the street.
Do you think that there's, so you have a slave and then like a master, do you think there's a master mentality in white people as well?
Oh,
Yeah,
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 definitely.
absolutely.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, that's
For
part,
sure.
that's a huge part of the
So
problem.
that's something just ingrained psychologically.
Oh,
that
yeah.
Like the sidewalk thing we were talking about yesterday, how if I'm on a sidewalk and it literally happened when we were going to the football game. I was walking on the sidewalk and this white woman is literally walking towards me and she would not move and I wasn't gonna move either. And she literally bumps me over and
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
I was like, you need to say excuse me, and I was like, white bee, and like
Yeah.
she like turned around and kept walking. Like I make it a point now not to move on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
They think that, because they think they're so privileged that we have to move for them.
Pretty
Like,
much.
Yeah, because it used to be a law. You
Yeah.
couldn't walk on the sidewalk. You had to walk in the street. And then it was, if you walked on the sidewalk and a white person was coming, you had to move out the way and let them pass.
And
And you had to get on the street. And I don't do that either. If I see somebody, just make it a point. If
Yeah.
I see someone white coming down the street, I'm not moving.
I'm not.
You
And
move.
you could see that it's very, very ingrained in them because even if we're at the club and we're with kids our age who haven't witnessed slavery, but they witnessed their parents doing the same thing, who witnessed their parents doing the same thing, who witnessed their grandparents doing the same thing, it's all coming back and it just passes down the line.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that there is a very huge complex of mastery between white.
Yeah, that was a good, good
And-
question.
yeah.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
look at it from the perspective of the white women who are calling the police or the white men who are calling the police for,
Yeah, barbecue Becky.
yeah, all of that. They know where their privilege lies and they use it.
Yeah,
They use it all the time.
yeah, that all the time. I've even seen video clips on YouTube where they'll just say, "I'm white. What are you gonna do about it?" You know, and then it just keeps suppressing because you just get tired of it after a while. You just get so tired, and it's stressful. Like we were talking about yesterday, how much stress it causes too. But that mentality is prevalent in this country because we have to make so many. We have to acquiesce so much to white people that and then in your head, and then your kids start watching you do it.
Mhm.
You know, you have to make a point so that your kids don't see you doing it, or if they do, you have to explain to them
Why you did it.
why you're doing these things, and yeah.
There was something recently on social media about a black mom who like hit this white woman because she reached over her son at Target. Cause I think her
Oh, yeah, I
son was
saw
standing
that.
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he accidentally hit her.
No,
And actually he didn't.
No, he didn't.
Yeah,
She just
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
reached over, like she literally like reached past the kid instead of just saying excuse me. It's that simple of a word, excuse me, and people
Wait.
move.
It was a white
A,
person.
a white woman at a Target was getting something, and there was a black kid there, and she literally just like reached past them,
Like he's not there.
like he's not, like he didn't exist. Instead of just saying excuse me.
Yeah,
It's
or
that
I saw the
simple.
one where the white lady was standing in line, black mom with her little son, was ahead of her, and then he reached for something, he almost accidentally hit her with his arm, and she just jumped up screaming, "He's trying to touch my butt!" And
Yeah.
then the
Oh,
police were
yeah.
called and all. The
Yeah.
boy was 9 years old, and it just traumatized him.
And then what, I think that she tried to apologize because a bunch of people called her out on it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then the mom was like, "We don't want your apology. We're not gonna accept it."
Yeah.
She's like, "Keep that. Our kid's gonna be traumatized from touching a white woman that he didn't even touch."
Yeah,
I think now, like, we just have to be unapologetically black, and that's
yeah.
the only way we could ever change getting out of that slave mentality is just by being ourselves and having that presence, but at the same time.
Do you think that would maybe like worsen the situation though?
But how, but,
Being unapologetic?
No.
because they can make accommodations for everyone else, they can make accommodations for Native American culture, Asian culture, Jewish culture, all other types of cultures, so they should make way and pave ways for us to be unapologetically black. Cause every other culture could be unapologetically themselves.
But that's,
And
that's.
So wait,
then they give Native Americans like, the government gives the Americans like a check, like $10,000 check like every month.
Well, not all Native Americans, but they do have reparations.
Well, we didn't get
Or
it,
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good,
But that's the thing though,
Right.
so like, that's what I was saying, like, the difference was between like the Jews and African Americans was like, they didn't, you guys were here and you didn't immigrate, you guys were slaves
We were
here,
brought here.
brought here. Jewish people were not, they immigrated here when they were slaves. Like, when they left all of their places, they were eventually like moved themselves
But
a
you
lot of
don't,
places.
but-
And so, wait, so what happened is like they took their own ownership. You guys didn't take your own ownership
But-
until
we
it
didn't give
happened.
the
Right,
opportunity
no, but
to.
that's what I'm saying, that's what I'm
well,
saying.
I'm even gonna go past given the opportunity to. I'm gonna go to, we don't have a country.
Right, no,
This is, everybody has a country they can go to.
right,
Everybody has a tradition and a language. This has been stolen from us. Our language, our traditions, our social norms, our everything about being African has been stripped from us. And then to keep the economic growth of slavery going, we've been integrated by white people. Our women's bodies have been violated just to produce more slaves. So then we've just been watered down from our African roots, which were taken away from us anyway. So we don't have that. That immigrants can. You have a country you can go
Right.
to. You have all these things. But we don't, they've been taken away from us. And so all we have is what we've created here for ourselves. And the problem with that is that it is to assimilate into white culture. And that's where this mentality comes from. Oh, I've got a code switch. Oh, I gotta straighten my hair. Oh, thank goodness I'm light skinned
I'm agreeing.
because I'm closer to white. So I'm more acceptable.
agreeing.
Or I'm not as much as a threat. Yeah, I'm not as much as a threat. These types of issues are what create that slave mentality.
right, you guys, no, people haven't had healing because there's been no way to have healed.
No, reparations would help healing.
Right.
Yeah.
A whole bunch.
No, I'm totally agreeing.
No, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I know.
Okay.
But I'm just saying reparations
I'd
would
rather cry in a Ferrari.
Yeah, you help. Well, and here's my thing too, if we had reparations, we could go back to pre-Jim Crow and have our own everything. You know, we wouldn't have to beg the white man for a bank loan to get a business. Or we wouldn't have to sit up and act like we're on the slave block. And we'd have our own colleges, our own banks, our own stores. Hey, if white people want to buy from us, cool. But that's capitalism as well. We're not even allowed to. We're not even really technically allowed to to really have engage in capitalism, because we're stopped at every corner.
I think,
It-
okay, I think that one thing, you know, that the Native American, like, people did, you know, building those, like, casinos, like the Muckleshoot Tribe in Auburn,
Exactly.
they're able to make so much money that they can provide, you know, once you
Yeah.
graduate high school, you get automatically $10,000 in a new car, you know, and why do you think they're able to do that, but like the black community can't do something like that for themselves, like owning like a casino or a big business?
Because we don't have reparations.
We
They,
don't have
they would
money.
never own those casinos if they hadn't got reparations from the government, because they wouldn't have the economic power to do so. That is the only reason. And by and large, Native Americans who keep to themselves in their own traditions, they don't want to have anything to do with the United States. Those reservations aren't actually part of the United States. They don't want to have anything to do with them. They like to keep in their own traditions because they know what colonization by white men does to them. And black people know this too.
Right.
It's just that we don't have the economic power to establish those types of things. And the only way to get it for us, since we don't have reparations, is to ask for it. Let me go to Bank of America and try and get a bank loan. And I have the same business as a white woman asking for it. She's a woman too. We're the same age, we have the same capabilities, we have the same FICO score, everything. And who do you think is gonna get that loan? It ain't gonna be me. It ain't gonna be Joy. It isn't gonna be Sanders if that was a male thing. It will be always that white person, because that is that is one way, and probably the biggest way economically, to hold power.
And it goes back to sharecropping. When
Yeah.
we had to rent from the farmer and rent the crops, a lot of the time, those crops and all the produce that we did make went right back to that farmer. So that also was okay, well, we're about to get out of slavery, now I have this land that I can make money off of, but I have to rent this tool, rent this land, and now I also have to repay the farmer. So now I only have enough to feed me and my children, but I'm not gonna be making any type of equity.
And that
off of
was
it.
slavery too, because the owners of those lands knew for a fact that since slavery was abolished, they couldn't have slaves anymore. So they created another type of slavery, and that was sharecropping was one of them. Yeah, and then after slavery, you get 40 acres and a mule.
Everybody.
Some people did, but they got it taken away from them. So that never happened. So,
And my thing is like, so y'all, the Jewish, y'all got to get to go to like Israel and all that for free, right?
So that's paid for by, the Israel's tax, the Israelis tax.
Okay, 'cause I'm saying, why can't black people go and we get to go to Africa and go visit the whole country of Africa?
well, they have a state that would support,
Yeah, the
that
state
financially supports that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
The-
they don't
the-
have to pay for
We
it.
don't pay for it because the, Israelis will like fund it.
Oh, okay.
And they believe.
No, the
They
only
believe
country in
that.
Africa, I think, I'm sorry, I just have to make this point while we're on this track, hold that thought. The only country in Africa, I believe, that is even contemplating doing something like that is Liberia. Because Liberia was created because after slavery, I forget his name, some rich white dude was like, if whoever you want to go back to Africa, we'll send you back there. And they owned that land in Africa. And so, and then, because it was colonized. So the slaves that were here, the ones that chose to go back to Africa, and wasn't many, because it wasn't announced that big, it was, I forget what state it was in, but they went back and created Liberia. And so that's how Liberia became, well, Liberia, but that's the only probably country that's kind of looking like that, because now they have generations of people who were American slaves that have lived there, and procreated there, and have an economic base there.
And Africa is not just one continent, it's multiple
Yeah,
countries, and
Exactly.
a lot of those countries aren't financially stable enough to
And
do
in
what
themselves,
Israel
And
is.
yeah.
there's a lot going on there
Yeah, and
Yeah.
once again, it's getting colonized by white men, stripping Africa of what they're worth. Because
Yeah.
there's stuff in Africa. You can make millions in Africa, but who's making those millions? The Chinese and the Americans, because they refuse to provide Africans, because they buy it out, and a lot of African presidents they don't care about what's going on in their community, and they sure as hell don't care about African Americans. They
Yeah.
just want to get wealth for themselves. So they're just gonna sell off parts of Africa to other countries who are willing to pay.
Yeah,
And that program is done through the Israelis and then also private donors.
Hmm.
So it's done in a way that it stays working, and it's only been around for a short amount of time.
Since there's a lot of rich African Americans in America, what's stopping them from investing in African business or, investing in African capitalism and trying to, get rid of that slave mentality and build up from there?
Because a lot of African Americans are ignorant about how Africa runs and operates in the first place, and they're not about to invest in somewhere they didn't come from. That's not their home. Even if they are to put in money to bring African Americans back to Africa, where are they gonna go? Who's gonna build these houses? Yes, they have the money, but at the same time, the government has to accept them, and I'm gonna say America also has to let them go.
I
Because
mean,
America's not about to just let African Americans go. Imagine if LeBron James tried to board a plane back to Africa and say he's
I
permanently
don't think they
moving
can
there.
stop him from doing that.
But they what? First of all,
He's
Akon,
LeBron James.
he's African, but he did his he has his thing where he did like.
Yeah, Akon does a lot.
And didn't Jay-Z do something for Africa also?
well, Jay-Z just gave them water, but everyone gives Africa water. We're done. Like
I
we're
think-
done with water.
I think it's the
let's
I
not
think-
get
let's
I
move
think-
on from water.
I think it's a
Yeah.
mentality thing where like African Americans say I'm not African, I'm this.
And
I think
that's another
where
thing.
that's where it's like like they think, oh, I'm not African, I'm black. Like I'm African American, I'm
And
black. So
that's-
that's where
yeah.
things. So it's like
yeah.
But isn't it also like people in general are worried about like some of the safety issues that's going
That's not.
on?
No,
I'm
because
just-
a lot of the safety issues would be abolished. It's a lot. Okay, if
But-
you actually
I'm
understood
saying-
what's going
No,
on
but
in
I'm saying
Africa.
who wants to, I'm saying with what we get in the news right now, people won't wanna
from
invest.
What you get in the news.
That's
You
right.
don't know what's actually going on in
But-
Africa. National Geographic, when they go to Africa, they're like, oh, look at this tiny hut box. But there's a bunch of beautiful surroundings around
Mm.
Africa. The news only pinpoints you to what you need to see. A lot of the things that are in the news aren't even that big of a deal. It could be like a village just had a war for a day.
I
They'll
don't,
film it
I
for-
don't
it's going on for a
disagree.
year.
I don't
Yeah.
disagree with you, but I'm saying is that what the majority of the population gets in America?
And that's what I'm saying, like Sanders just said, it's a lot of the ignorance. America builds up a lot of ignorance against Africa, so a lot of these African American billionaires aren't gonna want to invest because they haven't taken the time to go and invest in Africa, to go actually go view the landscape and see the opportunity. A lot of the things that they think about Africa stem from American news and what America and National Geographic say about Africa.
Yeah, and I think a lot of African countries, people over here are so uncivilized. They just don't have this and they don't have that. There are some beautiful cities in a lot of African countries that are just as progressive as anything here. And we don't see that on the news. They don't want you to see it,
Do you know
first of all.
Uganda has Domino's, Pizza Hut, and McDonald's, and we
Yeah.
also have Uber. But
Yeah.
did you guys? No one knows that.
Yeah, I think little by little, like you have to kind of, cause I'm still trying to do it, but you have to kind of educate yourself about different countries and cities in those countries in Africa. And the way I started doing it, because I'm such a movie freak, is I just started watching movies from different countries in Africa. You know, and people think, oh, an African movie, oh, no, there's really good movies just as good as anything that comes out of Hollywood, that comes out of a lot of these countries. And they allow you a window into to more subtle, the more subtle aspects of the culture there. And you can see the dress, and you can see the streets, and you can see the buildings and the cars, and the homes and all this stuff. And it kind of enlightens you, like you get out of that mentality like Africa's some broke down country with all this, stuff happening, and like Joy said, a little hut and stuff. It opens up your perspective, and there's a couple of cities I want to go to.
For example,
But yeah.
who's the artist John, I don't know how to say his name. Saying that you know how to say
Who?
it. John
Jadena?
Yeah, him. He actually is an African American with money, but he took his time to study and find out exactly where did he come from. And when he went there, now he can't stop going back. He's constantly in Africa, and he's constantly trying to find ways to educate other African Americans about Africa. He's actually invested his time, and a lot of these people don't want to. They just want to be like, okay, well, we sent over a well.
Yeah,
I think-
exactly.
Yeah, Israel was like super successful doing that with Birthright, basically having Jews come from America, never really explored their Jewish heritage, don't really know anything about Israel, but once they go to Israel, they see that, oh, this country is beautiful, I want to move here, and then I want to, basically have sex with another Jew, and basically they want to like build their country, make it a lot stronger. So I think, if Africa could do something like that, if they get sponsors, obviously it's a lot of several countries, it's like so difficult, for them to do that, but if they could bring, African Americans back to Africa so they can explore, the roots and become more educated, do you think that would help?
I think that would help, but Joy has a point. I think it has to be the other way around.
It has to be
Americans coming over
and supporting
and
the trip.
supporting. Like, there's this, I forgot to show you this, you'll appreciate this. Because we like clothes. There is this clothing company I think it is in Liberia, where this family that lived in Florida, their grandparents, and all the way back to post-slavery, have lived in Liberia. So they wanted to go to Liberia and start a business. So they went back to Liberia and they visited and they got to know the landscape and the culture and the country, and then they found out what they kind of wanted to find out, what can we do here. So they brought a clothing company there, but they make all the clothes there, and all the women there, if anybody can work there. So they started out with like 5 employees. I think they have 20, 30 employees now, but they're all women that have either been disowned by their families for some reason, have been in abusive situations, just are wanting to work there. All these different women from different backgrounds, but they are natives to the land. And they do all the work there, and they sell everything there, and they sell it in the American and African market.
And we would have to build an economy in order for Africa to even reach a step to do that. Even if it is multiple countries, if it's like, okay, your country's really good at growing coffee.
Yeah.
Let's get Beyonce to invest in you guys growing some coffee. And okay, your country knows how to make fabric. Your country can grow pot.
Yeah.
Like, it needs to start having an economy there before we start talking about let's bring other people over.
Yeah.
Because
And
we
that's
have
a
people
good,
coming here for tourism, and that's basically what you guys would be doing when you come, is tourism.
yeah, and that's a good point too, because there was this huge factory in Liberia that had been there for a long time, where they make all these beautiful fabrics, and those women didn't get fabrics from Europe or from the United States or from China. They contracted with the owners of that textile mill, and that's where all their fabrics come from. So there was partnership there, and now they don't even come back to the United States. They may come back to visit family now and then, but those women are there now, and they have all these other people working for them. All those people are people that otherwise maybe wouldn't have been able to afford to eat the next day.
Even shea butter, I'm not sure if it's Haiti or Africa that they say that they make a lot of their stuff from,
Mhm.
but you don't see the economic return in that because they end up selling all their products to America.
Yeah,
And America gets that economic value and that
Right,
economic return,
right.
but African women are back there making it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you guys provided them a job, but at that time, that doesn't help the economy flow.
right, and I think that's the thing is because, and I'm just using this one, clothing company as an example because that was one of the ladies' points. It was like, I can't sit here and sell and get people from America to come over here and work and do, I have to change the economy, help change the economy here. And it actually has, because a lot of these women, now they're starting to hire men too, but she was more focused on the women. A lot of these women they have shares in the company and stuff.
Yeah.
So they can change things economically for their own families, for their own kids, and as that company grows,
They progress.
yep, and it's growing, cause I saw their video, I mean, their, press pack, they're getting people, from all over the world buying their stuff, and a lot of celebrities, like, Beyonce and Solange wear their clothes all the time, buy stuff from them all the time. So, it's just a matter of Americans doing that, and the mentality that Sanders was talking about, like, okay, well, I'm not African and I'm not,
It's
you
like
know,
Africa's beneath a lot of
exactly,
African-Americans.
that's another factor into that slave mentality. to
Well,
me.
Joyce said that beneath a lot of African Americans. I also feel like it's the other way around because at my school we had a black student union, and I wasn't part of it, but I heard what happened. So a black guy ran it, right? I think he was a guy or girl, whatever. But he ran it, and they also had Jamaicans and Africans in it, and they were butting heads because they didn't like the Africans and Jamaicans were like, oh, I'm not black, I'm this and that, I'm Jamaican, I'm African, so we shouldn't have to have a black student union. We need to have an international student union. Like they were arguing back and forth, and they wouldn't come together because y'all all the same color. I don't understand why just because you're from Jamaica, just because you're from this part of Africa, y'all all are still black. I don't understand why. So he ended up quitting, and nothing really happened with the black student union.
Well, I would say that a lot of Africans have ignorance about African Americans because of, once again, what we see on TV. When like if you go back to Uganda, they only pinpoint it as African Americans are criminal. Just like if you go to China, a lot of them think African Americans are criminals. Why? Because that's the type of news that Americans play. And my grandpa had the same type of ignorance
Mhm.
until he was put into the same exact environment as an African American and exactly experienced what African Americans
Mhm.
experience. That's when he was like, wow, it really is the white man and not the black man. So there is lots of ignorance that stems from Africans too.
Yeah, and I think too, another thing is that if you are in a country where everyone is black, why would you even think about being black? You know what I'm saying? We have to think about being black at all times here in this country because we live in a dominant culture. But they maybe don't. So when they come here, then that's a pride thing too, you know?
But a white person ain't gonna be like, oh, just because you're.
But they may
well,
not
First
understand
of
or
all,
know
don't
that.
say that because whenever I'm like, you're
Yeah.
white, they're like, no, I'm Irish, European, Italian. Okay,
Yeah.
vanilla.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
So
that's
it's,
true.
it's all the same. Like a lot of, cause I remember one time, I was in middle school and we were having this argument with these African Americans, and they're like, I'm not African, I'm not from Africa, don't ever say that again. And then I was like, you're African American. Like
Yeah.
Africa comes first before American. And like they argue the whole entire time about
Yeah.
how they're not African.
Your derivative, your ethnic derivative is from, that's a word, is from Africa. Your nationality is American. You're not, I'm not, ethnically, nobody's American. That's a nationality, you know, but I don't claim anything about America other than, okay, I was born here. I mean, cause you ain't claiming nothing about me. So my thing is that you can't deny your African heritage, because that is what you are, and I don't care how it plays out in America, the type of thinking when people look at you and you know, I don't care how that plays out, you can't deny that you are African American. Now, through lineage and slavery, and the production, the use of black women's bodies, has that been watered down a lot? Yeah. But that wasn't our fault, by and large. So you still, there's that mentality. Are you gonna claim master, or are you gonna claim your real heritage? I think that's the problem, that people saying that because they're ignorant. How are you gonna sit up and say, I'm not African? Yeah, you are. You just happened to be born in America due to the transatlantic slave route, and that wasn't your fault, but don't try and deny it.
But you claiming that mentality is your fault.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the problem.
It is a problem. I think that, yeah, the point Sanders made, that is a big, huge factor in, you know, that mindset.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, are there any other comments?
I lost topic.
There was, it went everywhere, but it all kind of goes
It
So
did.
together.
there's people, African American people being ignorant to their African heritage, is that still part of a slave mentality?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. Good observation, Gabe, because yes, that is part of it. And I think that as generations go further and further away from the orientation of family and knowledge of self, and more into technology, I think that's gonna be a problem. I think the young black kids out here now have absolutely no idea about their heritage.
So do you think that's the first step to getting rid of that
Yes.
slave mentality?
It's knowledge of self. It's your history. It's the history of African people, and not just in on the whole in different countries. You know, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, understanding slavery, understanding Jim Crow, understanding all this, and I don't think that enough young. Well, there's some old ones too, because I know some that have no clue. But you know, these younger kids coming up today, they're it's so diverse. Oh, you know, hey, you're going to a school that's been integrated by law, and before you were born. What if you were born back, like, I didn't go, you know, busing started when I was young. I mean, schools were just starting to be integrated. So if you don't have that experience, you just, you know, you're 18 years old, you go to stadium or you go to some high school and you're just used to the diversity. But they don't understand is how that happened. And just because you sit in a diverse situation doesn't mean you should just blend in. You should actually know who you are, where you came from, your history, your family's history. And that lays the foundation for your self-esteem, your self-worth, your understanding of the world around you, and how it affects you as a black person. And I think that there's a huge lack of that.
I think so too.
Especially because if you don't learn from your history, history will repeat itself.
Oh, it's repeating itself already.
I'm just saying though,
Yeah.
it's really important that if you don't learn from your history, history is
Yeah,
ultimately going to repeat itself. So.
yeah, because you went from shackles on your legs and arms to shackles in your brain. Yeah. Well, that was an enlightening conversation, and like Joy said, it did go everywhere, but I think maybe it needed to, because there's so many facets to this conversation. I'd like to thank my panel today, and thank you, and join us next week for another episode of Confabulation.
Bye.
Bye.